What's up, all you Minties? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and join me today as I talk about my top 10 Boom and Archaia graphic novels of all time. So, stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Back by popular demand is my top 10 list. So I've done a top 10 IDW, Image Comics, and Dark Horse graphic novels. So I figured it's time that I do a Boom / Archaia. And I'm throwing Archaia in there because Boom publishes those books. So keep that in mind. Because I thought about making it, let's just do 5 Boom and then 5 Archaia. But no, let's just wrap it all together. Now, some of the things in this list you may not agree with if you read them, and I would love to know what your top 10 graphic novels from Boom Studios are. Leave those comments down below. And some of the books in here you may or may not have heard of. I do a hidden gems list every month, and some of these books here may make it on that list if they didn't make it to the top 10. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Kicking off this list is a book that brought a lot of you to this channel, and that is The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers by Kyle Higgins. Available in trade paperback format and available in these beautiful deluxe Year 1, Year 2 Shattered Grid editions. There's a box set as a Kickstarter. I think that's still going on, but that will also be available at your local comic book shop or through Diamond Comics. So, this is a series that Kyle Higgins started at Boom Studios, and it sets the story after Tommy Oliver leaves Rita Repulsa's influence and ended up joining the Power Rangers, focusing on how it would change the relationship between the characters. So the TV show kind of is a big inspiration for this, but then he modernizes a lot of the things and the stories and the characters, taking the characterization of each of the 5 Rangers like Jason, Kim, Billy, Zach, and Trini, and just giving it a little bit of a spin on it. So here's the thing. I never watched the show. I think I caught like 15 minutes of the show when my brothers were watching it. I was in high school when it came out. And it wasn't that I was too cool to watch Power Rangers. I read comic books. But it was just not for me. I had watched Ultraman growing up and Ultra 7. And I thought that it was just the same kind of thing. Monster of the Day kind of story. So I didn't have this love for Power Rangers. But when I read this, holy crap, I fell in love with the characters, I fell in love with the story, and I wanted to know more. And yes, even though it took inspiration from the TV show, it is its own thing. So even if you're not a fan of the TV show, I have never watched a single episode, just know of the toys, or you've heard of Power Rangers, going into this, you will be completely fine. The artwork is phenomenal throughout the series. There's different artists that take over the book. The huge story that leads into Shattered Grid is amazing. I've done overviews on the channel of each of the years, and by far one of the most surprising things that I wasn't expecting to fall in love with this story as much as I did. But man, Higgins really lured me in and kept me there. And now I still follow it even though he doesn't write the stories anymore. But absolutely, this is how we kick off the list. Godshaper by Spire and Jonas Goonface. So on this channel, every once in a while when I have time, I like to do something called Reviews in a Flash. And one of the books that The Astonishing Melanie and I did a couple of years ago was this particular book. So this is all centered around 1958. And pretty much the laws of physics have just gone out the window. They have stopped working. No ignition, electricity, combustion, nothing like that is working. However, there's an alternative energy source that's been provided. And people found themselves being accompanied by their own little personal gods, because that's what they call themselves. And that gives them new fuel, new currency in this alternate reality world. I love it. That it just throws you in there in the middle of the story like you're supposed to know all these things. One of my favorite things about Spire, and this won't be the only book with his name on this list. Now, not every human has a god. For example, the main character in A doesn't have his own god. And not every god has their own human. So, in A meets his little buddy named Bud, who's a friendly god without a human, and together they go on the road looking for food, looking for shelter, and looking for the next gig that they get paid for. I think one of the biggest problems or issues I've heard people complain about Godshaper is the dialogue. Spurrier does create a new dialogue and gives people certain accents, so I can understand why it gets confusing. My first read through here, I got a little confused. I didn't know what the hell sometimes people were saying. So I understand that, but if you can get past that, you can kind of get used to some of the dialogue and dialect that the people use throughout the book. Now, even though Ine and Bud, through all these gigs and these adventures, keep a low profile, they stumble across a mystery. Now, this mystery will change the way that people view gods and gods view people. And that's what I love about this series. You're immediately thrown into it as if you're expected to know what's been going on, what this world is like. And I love that about Spurrier's writing. The artwork is phenomenal. I really love Jonas Goonface. He brings this imagination, this crazy alternative world to life. And to me, this is one of the best examples of those graphic novels that you can only do in graphic novel format, because I think doing this in animation or doing this as a movie or TV show just wouldn't do this particular series justice, not with the type of art style that Goonface has for this particular book. Giant Days by John Allison and Lisa Treyman. These are available in trade paperback format and in these hardcover editions. However, they stopped making the hardcover edition, so if you just want to stick to one format, the trade paperback would be the way to go. This is a series that I didn't even know I wanted to read until I think it was Wonder Maddie that did a review of it a couple of years ago, and she really enjoyed it and wanted me to check it out because she knows that I wasn't the biggest fan of Lumberjanes, and no, that's right, you're not going to see Lumberjanes on this list, but my daughter really liked it, but she said this is more for an adult audience, so I was like, sure, I'll check it out. Man, I love this. This was super relatable, super cute, really sweet. It's a funny slice of life type of story. To me, this had it all, and I would strongly recommend it. So the basic premise of this is about 3 girls that are in their first few weeks at a university in England. And you have the character of Susan, who's the one with the most common sense. She's the one that's kind of writing the story. Through her narrative, you get to experience what it's like to be friends with these 2 other girls. But she is a little bit of a slob. So you also have Esther, who is your goth goddess that has problems with boys, and she's a big drama queen. And then you also have Daisy, and Daisy is one of my favorite characters in this series. So she's the one that was pretty much homeschooled and doesn't know how the real world works, and struggling with just who she is supposed to be. So the book is about relationships with not just each other, but also the bullies that are in school, significant others, and man, it reminds me of the friendships that we had in our late teens, early 20s, and finding out who you are and who you're meant to be. I love that about this series. It reminded me of that era in my life when I was living with some friends, so that's why I added it to this list. Yes, I have nothing in common with these 3 girls. Well, you know what? No, I do have a lot in common with a couple of them, but I don't want to spoil anything. The artwork here is phenomenal. The artwork by Lisa Treyman completely fits the tone of the story. So she comes from the world of animation. So she's worked at Disney before. She's worked on several cartoons. So this does have a cartoony art style to it. So if that's not for you, well, maybe avoid it. But if you can overlook that, or if you love that kind of stuff, then this is the book to try out. Absolutely. I really hope that they bring the hardcovers back, but I haven't heard otherwise. Irredeemable by Mark Waid and Peter Krause. How could I not put this book on this list? I'm pretty sure if you look online at anybody's top 5, top 10, top 30, top 1 maybe, favorite Boom Studios graphic novels, you will find Irredeemable in there. And it's difficult to choose a Mark Waid book. Like, what's my favorite Mark Waid book? I think the nostalgia in me will always say, well, it's got to be either his Flash run or his Kingdom Come book. But this has to be top 3. I love this story. This is the story of what if Superman went bad. It's the story of the character known as the Plutonian, who is the world's greatest superhero, and one day he snaps and turns into the world's greatest supervillain. And his teammates have to turn against him to try to save the world. Cool concept. It's been done before. But the way that Wade writes this particular story makes it unique. It's one of my favorite... Plutonian is one of my most favorite complex characters in comics. Just because you don't know why he turned, and slowly you start to figure out why he's lost faith. And that's the question, is... Has he lost faith, or was he evil to begin with? And there's so many twists and turns in here, you'll be second-guessing yourself, because I know I did. There's a total of 5 volumes that's collected in an omnibus softcover format. These deluxe editions, sadly, are not being reprinted. I'm not sure why. There's also the Incorruptible series that I almost added to the top 10 list, but I feel like that's kind of cheating because these kind of go hand in hand. But if you're going to read one, absolutely check out Irredeemable, especially if you like superhero comics. So if you come from the world of DC and Marvel and you want to try something a little bit with an independent taste, look no further than Irredeemable. Mouse Guard by David Peterson. The reason I broke the rule and I said I'm going to make this a Boom/Archaia favorite graphic novels, because of Little Mice with Swords. Of course that this was going to make it on here. You've heard me talk about this on the channel before, I hope. And if you haven't, need I say more than Little Mice with Swords? You know, I'm a big fan of the fantasy realm. I love that. And you put it into a comic form, and you throw anthropomorphic animals in there that can talk to each other, and this time they're fighting, like, for their lives. Oh, man. So, pretty much, the basic premise of this is a bunch of little mice in this world are struggling to live against all the oncoming forces, whether it's predators or just the weather conditions. So they form a mouse guard to protect them. They're not just soldiers to fight off intruders, they're also guides for the common mice looking to journey without confrontation. So the main 3 characters that we followed through this series are Saxon, Kenzie, and Liam. And through them, you get to see the adventures of the mouse guards and their adversaries. And these 3 mice are dispatched to find a missing merchant that never arrived at their destination. So they go on search for this missing merchant, and reveals a lot more things going on, a lot of twists and turns. Now, this book is currently on hiatus, sadly. I'm not sure when Peterson's going to pick it back up, but I really hope it comes back, because this was one of my favorite series. It's a series that I read to my kids, so it's one of those for all ages. There are trade paperback versions of this particular hardcover available as well. But yes, the whole reason why I said, let's make it a Boom/Archaia graphic novel list, it's because of Mouse Guard. Heavy Vinyl by Carly Ustin and Nina Vacueva. Now, it was my buddy OmniDog that told me about this book, and when he told me the premise, I said, I think I've already read that, man. I've read Giant Days. And then he sold me on the fact that all this takes place in 1998 at a vinyl record shop. Now, my wife is the one, Astonishing Melanie, that collects records in this house, vinyl records. But I understand the beauty of them and appreciate them. And one of my favorite movies in the 90s is Empire Records. So I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. So this is the story of Chris. She's a new girl working at this local record shop named Vinyl Destination. And there she works with Maggie, who she's kind of crushing on, but she doesn't know exactly how Maggie feels. Then there's the Dolores chick, who is kind of like the goth girl that doesn't want to be liked by anybody. But then she grows on you because she has a lot of heart. You have Kennedy, who's like the cool chick. And her boyfriend is the guy that works at the comic shop. So awesome points for that. And then leading this band, the boss is Irene. She's the one that owns the shop. So when the lead singer of a local rock band goes missing, her co-workers invite her to join a secret underground fight detective club. And it's all downstairs underneath this vinyl record shop. That's so badass. Like, it's so ridiculous, but the fact that it has the year 1998, the dialogue from the 90s, not a lot, but some, and then just a lot of 90s records. They talk about the music, the anime style to it. As a matter of fact, the opening is very anime-ish when Chris is running late to work as she's running out of her house. That's so tropey of anime, but I love Vacueva's artwork. It's so beautiful. It's so easy to follow. And yeah, I got hooked on it. I mean, Just like Giant Days, there's no super villains in this, but sometimes you need a break from that and get yourself a nice slice of life story, and Heavy Vinyl did it for me. There are 2 volumes available so far, no mention of a hardcover or anything. Coda by Simon Spurrier and Mateus Vergara. So remember when I said you would see Cy Spurrier's name again? Well, I guess I kind of cheated. This is Simon Spurrier. Yes, this is the same creator. So this is all set in the aftermath of this huge apocalyptic war which wiped out all magic in this fantasy world. So then you have this character who was a former bard, the main character here named Hum, who is seeking a way to save his wife's soul. And his wife, Circa, when I say soul, it's a different twist and definition, because once you read this, you'll see what I mean. Because she was taken by this demon horde named the Urkin, but anyway, you'll find out. So it's just him and his unicorn roaming this land, but is he really a unicorn? And what kind of magic does that ring have that Hum wears? This is another one of those books that Simon Spurrier just throws you in the middle of. Doesn't explain anything, but through the narration of Hum, and actually it's a pretty cool way he does it. Hum is writing letters to Circa as if she's passed. So you don't know if she's dead or if she's captured. He keeps telling people that her soul was taken. So it's pretty interesting when the revelation comes out. And there's a total of 3 books here. And one of my other things that I love about this is the element of RPGs, like JRPGs. They have magic points and things like that. The kind of monetary units that they use is very interesting and really reminds me a lot of those JRPGs that I've loved throughout the years. And the other thing that I want to point out is Vergara's artwork. It is freaking beautiful. I need to seek out his Supergirl comic that he did, because this, I was just blown away. The landscapes, the creatures, the not so perfect human characters. Loved it. The colors are absolutely stunning. And it seems like when Cy Spurrier wants to work on a specific book, I don't know if he creates these artists or he just finds them somewhere, or if there's just a specific group of people known as the Cy Spurrier artists that he just picks and chooses from. Like, he wants to write a story about an apocalyptic world that was once this fantasy realm, and he's like, yeah, I want to work with that guy. That guy's perfect. I don't know how he does it, but he's always able to find the perfect artist. And I hate using that term because that puts this automatically on such a high pedestal, but I can't word it any other way. Something is Killing the Children by James Tynion and Werther Dell'Edera. One of my favorite reads in 2020. Of course, I'm going to put it on this list. It automatically made my top 10 after reading that 4th issue. Oh my gosh, this series is so good. There is a hardcover coming out, and I know I think it's through Tynion's website that he's selling a limited edition slip case of the hardcover that will collect the entire story, or you can get the 3 trade paperbacks. But this is a horror comic. It definitely has mature content, so if you can't stomach the death of children, then this is not for you. I do warn you ahead of time for that reason, because this has a lot of that. The whole premise of the story is purely that. So in the town of Archer's Peak, this little town in the heart of America, a bunch of children go missing. And nobody can find them. Most of the children never return, and the ones that do return have horrible and terrible stories to tell about maybe a monster that's taking the town's children. Don't know what's real or what's not. And the only hope in finding the kids comes in the form of this young girl named Erica Slaughter. How badass is that name? And of course her outfit, it's awesome. I think I've seen it cosplayed long before I even read the book. I think people were cosplaying her before the first issue even came out. And that's what she does. She says that she kills monsters. Now, there is a cost to killing these monsters, but you can find out for yourself whether the monsters are real or not, or whether Erica says who she says she is. All of that can be found in these pages. Cannot recommend this series enough. It is freaking phenomenal, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. The Spire by Simon Spurrier, Jeff Stokely, and Andre May. I promise this is the last Cy Spurrier book. I can't help it. They're all freaking phenomenal. This one, I think we did a review. It was The Amazing Amanda and I a few years ago. But regardless, this is a beautiful book. I cannot believe that we don't have this in oversized hardcover format. But the Spire is this big mountain of metal and stone. It's a huge city that has risen in the middle of this radioactive desert. It's built on the ruins of an older civilization, and it's filled with twisting tunnels and elevators and just a bunch of different types of people. You have a bunch of humans, and then you have humanoid creatures, non-human creatures. And recently, the ruler of this city has died, and his daughter takes charge. And through various questionable measures, she attempts to bring peace with the religious extremists that live outside of the city, out in the desert, while trying to get rid of the non- or semi-human people inside the city. And at the same time, the commander of the City Watch, Shaw, who happens to be the last of her kind, last of her species, known as the Medusi, she attempts to solve a series of just grisly murders that is surrounding this ruling family. So there is a mystery, there is a whole whodunit, who killed who and who's profiting from all this. But let's talk about this world and this art. Again, you're thrown in the middle of this story, you're a little confused, and that's okay. Perfectly okay. Because Spurrier builds on that. Builds on the hope that you're completely confused, and then adds a lot more twists and turns. But by the time you're finished reading it, you want more. And you get it. You get the gist of the story. You understand the meaning and the metaphors that are thrown in there. Now, that's the story. The artwork, holy crap, phenomenal. Loved it. I can't recommend this book enough. This is beautifully drawn. It reminds me of Mobius. It has the colors remind me of like European type of colors used in the pages of heavy metal. And I keep going back to heavy metal because that's the stuff that I read where I first found European artists. But it does have a Mobius feel to it. It has a Miyazaki Nausicaa Valley of the Wind manga type of look to the characters, to the settings, the city, the desert, everything. Just reminds me of Miyazaki's Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. 100% recommend this book. It is absolutely stunning, and I can't believe, like I mentioned at the beginning when I started talking about it, we don't have an oversized hardcover. What? Claus by Grant Morrison and Dan Mora. Super sexy Santa Claus is what I like to call this book. But really, it's for all ages. I think Lydia, she was 9 or 8 years old at the time when she read this. She was the first one to read it in the family. She just found it when I bought a stack of books, and my wife was like, I just want you to know your daughter read Claus. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know if it's got anything bad in there. It doesn't. It's wonderful. You have Grant Morrison and you have Dan Mora telling the story, the origin of Santa Claus. So this is a very Christmas book, if you need a Christmas comic. There's really no need to provide a review here because that should sell itself. You have Grant Morrison telling the origin of Santa Claus. But for the sake of this video, I'll still give you the premise. So you have Claus. It's the tale of a wild man with a snowy white wolf called Lily. And Lily is sort of his sidekick. And the story mixes magic and folklore, witchcraft, shamanism, and a bunch of other fairy tales that you may or may not have heard of. And then Morrison throws in this tyrant who is ruling over this town called Grimsviv. And the tyrant has just banned all celebrations. And then we have Claus coming into this town, who's a rebel, who vows to bring joy back into the lives of the people of this town. And he starts off by dropping off little gifts at the doorstep of every child in town. How adorable is that? How can you hate a guy like that? The best way to describe this book, and there's a couple follow-ups after this, is just majestic. Dan Mora's artwork is completely beautiful. Morrison's writing it's one of the easiest Morrison stories I've ever read. Normally when you're talking about Morrison, they tend to be a little confusing, a little more than what you think you're reading between the lines kind of stories. Looking at You, Doom Patrol, and Invincibles, just a couple, but I still love those books. But no, this is just, I hate to even use the words run of the mill, but sometimes you need that. It's a beautiful story. You don't need to have read anything before this. You don't even need to read the follow-ups, but you'll want to. But absolutely 100% Claws is how I wrap up this series of my top 10 favorite Boom and Archaia graphic novels of all time. Now, if you're interested in purchasing some of these graphic novels, check out our sponsors. If you live in Europe and are interested in pre-ordering or purchasing Omnis, then you should definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices for Marvel and DC big books within the EU. Flat shipping of €9.90 for EU countries. Extremely careful and sturdy packaging. Emails are answered within 24 hours. And they have a superb selection of new releases and out-of-print books on their website. Just head over to waltscomicshop.com for more great deals and rare titles. And for a limited time, you can use the code nearmintcon, all one word, at the checkout for free shipping to all EU countries with your first order. Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for Omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They pride themselves on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Check out the bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. CGN is excited to announce that they are now taking pre-orders. They're making it easier for you to ensure that you don't miss out on the hottest releases. CGN is currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, let them know that you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. This promotion is valid for U.S. customers only. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount and quality shipping and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was it. That was my top 10 list. Let me know in the comments down below what your top 10 would be. And yeah, what do you think I should have added? What do you think I should have taken away? And I'm sure here in a couple of years that will change the more books they publish. I cannot wait to finish Once and Future, but I've only read the first issue, so I didn't think it was fair to add something like that as of this video. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. We are on Patreon and on Spreadshop. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And more importantly, everyone, stay healthy, stay safe, much love.